Standing up. Standing up. Okay. So let us wait and we can start the class.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Just wait, I'm opening the PowerPoint. So we're in the unit 4, okay? Sorry, unit 5. So this is unit 5. Unit 5. So last time, what virus we are discussing, students? What is the last virus we are discussing? I think Epstein-Barr virus, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So first we discussed about smallpox, then we discussed about herpes simplex viruses, which is herpes simplex 1 and 2. Then the next virus in alpha class is Epstein-Barr virus. So that is, I just given you my notes. I haven't given a proper lecture. So now we can go through Epstein-Barr virus once. Then we can proceed to the next virus, which is cytomegalovirus. So I will just brush up this Epstein-Barr virus. Share the screen. Yeah. Okay. I hope the PowerPoint is visible to you, right? Is the slides visible to you?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Very good. So, okay. So the next virus, students, which is Epstein-Barr virus. See, remembering these viruses is very simple. So herpes viruses are very straightforward. All of them are a herpes family. They have same morphology, same resistance, and same pathogenesis. All these viruses can cause cancers. These viruses can cause latent infections, and there is no vaccine for these viruses. And all of these will show intranuclear inclusion bodies. So some viruses will show acidic inclusion bodies and some will show basic inclusion bodies, and further we have Cowdery type A and type B inclusion bodies. So in the RNA viruses, in the DNA viruses, in the 5th unit we have DNA viruses. Among the smallpox, herpes simplex viruses, adenovirus, and hepatitis virus are the viruses that we have. So a quick, I'm just skipping all these things. So coming to the introduction to Epstein-Barr virus. So we know that we will try to satisfy all these 10 points for all the viruses. So coming to the introduction of Epstein-Barr virus. So Epstein-Barr virus classification introduction. So this virus belongs to the herpes viridae. In herpes viridae, we have 3 subfamilies. So those 3 subfamilies include alpha, beta, and gamma. In the alpha viruses, we have herpes simplex 1 and herpes simplex 2. And the third virus is Epstein-Barr virus. So in this lecture, we will discuss about Epstein-Barr virus, which belongs to the alpha family of herpes viridae. Then we have beta viruses, which is cytomegalovirus, and in gamma viruses, we have varicella zoster. Today, most probably, I will try to finish Epstein-Barr virus and cytomegalovirus. Then in the next lecture, we can have varicella zoster. Then followed by 2 more lectures, we can discuss about adenovirus and hepatitis. I think most probably within 4 lectures, we are going to finish our complete virology and mycology. Then parallelly in the 6th unit, we have this PCR, and PCR is parallelly we are studying in the lab sessions. So there is no delay in your syllabus. Within the next week, we are going to finish all the syllabus of your mycology and virology. So all you have to do is you need to start revising the topics. So morphology of Epstein-Barr virus, size is 100 to 200 nanometers, shape is irregular, symmetry is icosahedral, and it has 162 capsomers. All herpes viruses have 162 capsomers. Genome is a double-stranded DNA. Then special envelope present, and special structures such as a tegment membrane is present. So this is the basic morphology of the Epstein-Barr virus. Then what is this Epstein-Barr virus? What is the features that the Epstein-Barr virus will show? as we already discussed, Epstein-Barr virus will cause something called the kissing syndrome. It is also called as kissing syndrome. That means most of the time this virus will transmit through saliva when there is an intimate oral, oral kissing. So that is how the virus will spread. Then when this virus will specifically intrude the B cells, it will specifically attack the B lymphocytes. So it will attach to a specific receptor which is present on the surface of B lymphocytes. That receptor is called as CD21. CD stands for cluster differentiation 21. So with the help of this CD21 receptor, the Epstein-Barr virus will integrate itself into the cell, integrate itself into the B lymphocyte. So resulting in generation of a B lymphocyte cancer. And that B lymphocyte cancer is called as Burkitt's lymphoma, where we can see a heavy inflammation of lymph nodes. So we know that lymph nodes have the lymphocytes. So all these lymphocytes will get cancer condition, and the patient will have a very prominent inflammations over the lymph nodes. So that particular cancer condition is called as Burkitt's lymphoma. Okay, and let us see complete things. So this is how the Burkitt's lymphoma looks like. So this is one clinical manifestation of the Epstein-Barr virus. So Epstein-Barr virus present everywhere. Almost 80 to 90% children will acquire this particular Epstein-Barr virus. So this infection is by the age, you will acquire this infection around 3 years of age, and once infected, this virus will present inside the body for lifelong. So the source of infection is usually through saliva of infected patients. So the virus will transmit through the saliva of the infected patients. And this virus is not so highly contagious, but still we need to be cautious. So this virus will transmit through intimate oral contact. So intimate oral contact, that means when the couple, when they're kissing each other, during that time there is a chance of transmission of the Epstein-Barr virus among the people. Okay, so this virus will cause 3 conditions, students. There will be 3 infections which is caused by Epstein-Barr virus. One is, as we know, Burkitt's lymphoma, which is a B lymphocyte carcinoma. Then we have infectious mononucleosis, which is also a disease to the B cells actually. So there you will see a enlarged nucleus within the cytoplasm of the cell. So it will cause infectious mononucleosis, Burkitt's lymphoma, and also it will cause infections in the immunocompromised hosts. And another important thing that I want to stress in this Epstein-Barr virus is, it is one of the common opportunistic viral infection that is seen in the patients that are immunosuppressed, compromised or immunosuppressed. For example, in case of AIDS, the person who has HIV infection, for them, there is a high chance of getting opportunistic infections such as Candida infection, Aspergillus. Coming to the viruses, he may get Epstein-Barr virus infection due to immunocompromised condition in the body. So Epstein-Barr virus is also one of the opportunistic infection. And also it will cause nasopharyngeal carcinoma, which is a cancer in the nasopharynx in the mouth. So in the nasopharyngeal region, we may get carcinoma. This particular carcinoma called nasopharyngeal carcinoma. So these are the overall clinical manifestations that can be seen by Epstein-Barr virus infection. So it will cause Burkitt's lymphoma, nasopharyngeal carcinoma, and infectious mononucleosis. Classically, this disease is called as a kissing syndrome. So this is an actual Burkitt's lymphoma child. So this child is affected by Burkitt's lymphoma, and you can able to see how his lymph nodes, the lymph nodes that are present in his neck and the pharyngeal region, they are infected by the virus. So he got a severe inflammation. So that this is the Burkitt's lymphoma, which is caused by Epstein-Barr virus. And this is a nasopharyngeal carcinoma, where we will see the cancer tumor within the nasopharyngeal region of the mouth. So this is the nasopharyngeal carcinoma, and it will also cause something called infectious mononucleosis or glandular fever. In case of infectious mononucleosis, we can able to see tonsillar exudates. That means if we open the mouth of the patient who are infected by this Epstein-Barr virus, inside the mouth, we will see tonsils with pus cells. So exudate discharging, pus discharging tonsils can be seen inside the mouth to the person who was infected by the Epstein-Barr virus. and this virus will start transmitting through the kissing. That is why it is also called kissing disease, as I stated. So the disease will usually last over 2 to 3 weeks. So within 2 to 3 weeks, the patient may recover. It is not so deadly, but it may cause cancers. It may cause B-cell lymphoma, which is a cancer condition, which is called Burkitt's lymphoma, may cause by Epstein-Barr virus. So whenever Epstein-Barr virus activates B cells, it leads to secretion of IgM antibodies. So due to attacking the B cells will undergo a cancer condition. Due to that, there will be an abnormal proliferation of B cells. The count of the B cell will be drastically increases. Instead of 1,000, we will have some 1 million B cells, and those more B cells will produce abnormal IgM antibodies. So high levels of IgM antibodies can be seen in the patients that are infected by infectious mononucleosis or simply by Epstein-Barr virus infection. So this is it. So these are the clinical conditions we can see in Epstein-Barr virus infected patients. Okay. So nasopharyngeal carcinoma, as I said, then B-cell carcinoma, Burkitt's lymphoma, then opportunistic infection in case of immunocompromised hosts such as AIDS infected patients, and it can also cause a disease called glandular fever or infectious mononucleosis. So this virus will attack the B cells by targeting a specific receptor called CD21. So with the help of this CD21 receptor, this virus will enter inside the B cells and it will cause the following clinical manifestations. Then let us see the pathogenesis of our Epstein-Barr virus. So what does this Epstein-Barr virus, how does it will attack the B cells? As I stated, this virus will enter through pharyngeal, through mouth actually. So the mode of transmission of this particular Epstein-Barr virus is through kissing. So through mouth, the virus will enter into the mouth, then it will enter nearby the pharyngeal epithelial cells, and it will bind to the CD21 receptors. Then it will multiply locally, then enters into bloodstream, which is called primary viremia. Then it will infect B lymphocytes. Then from here, we will have the condition, Burkitt's lymphoma will start from here. So in most cases, the virus remain latent inside the lymphocytes. So most of the cases, the virus will become latent. That means it won't show immediate signs and symptoms in the patient, but which becomes transformed. This transformation occurs, or immortalized cells are capable of indefinite growth in vitro. So they are polyclonally activated and simple students. This virus, after becoming latent, when the virus reactivated, the B cells will become, they will have a cancer. So there will be an abnormal increased B cell proliferation. So the count of the B cells will increase, and that B cells will cause a cancer. Parallelly, those B cells will also release progeny viruses, resulting in death of B cells, and the B cells will release the progeny viruses, which are baby viruses. Okay, so that is how this virus will cause pathogenesis. Then Epstein-Barr virus antigens are expressed on the surface of infected B cells. T lymphocytes undergo blast transformation in response to such neoantigens. These T lymphocytes are seen as an atypical lymphocytes in the blood smears. Okay, let me show you a small diagram here. I know I was oversimplifying the concept because I don't want to discuss in depth of individual viruses the way we did for RNA viruses, because all these herpes viruses fall in the same family. So let us know the basics of this virus. So what in this paragraph they are stating is, from here to here, they are stating that this is a B cell. So this B cell will get infected by the Epstein-Barr virus, resulting in abnormal proliferation of the B cells. So there will be an abnormal increase in the B cell count, and this abnormally increased B cells will release many progeny viruses. So many progeny viruses will be released by this B cells, abnormally proliferated B cells. Meanwhile, in the parallelly, they will also secrete high levels of immunoglobulin M. So they will secrete IgM, right? At the same time, this virus will release new antigens. These new antigens are called as neoantigens, and these neoantigens will trigger the T lymphocytes. So the T lymphocytes will get triggered to this new antigens, and these T lymphocytes will try to attack the virus. During this battle between the virus and the T lymphocytes, this virus will cause a little damage to the lymphocytes. It will cause a little damage to the lymphocytes, resulting in formation of nucleus, the vacuolation of the nucleus. So the T lymphocyte nucleus will become vacuolated. That means the nucleus will become like this. In the center of the nucleus, we can able to see an eye like this. So these particular cells, they are the infected T lymphocytes. So these are atypical T lymphocytes. These atypical T lymphocytes can be seen in the blood smear of the patient that was infected by Epstein-Barr virus. And this particular condition is called as mononucleosis. Since mono means there will be a vacuole within the nucleus of the T lymphocytes. So that is why this condition is called mononucleosis. So parallelly, it is causing one Burkitt's lymphoma by attacking the B cells, and also it is causing mononucleosis in the T cells, and also it will cause a cancer in the nasopharyngeal region of the mouth. See how much how much destruction the virus is doing inside the body, right? Then after that, the virus will become latent, and it will also cause a reactivation of the latent virus. Due to this reactivation of latent virus, it will cause B cell cancer. Hello, sir. Okay, so this virus caused a hyper pandemic. Okay, hyper pandemic in Africa. So that is all about this virus. So it will cause a Burkitt's lymphoma, nasopharyngeal carcinoma, and also it will cause this particular condition called infectious mononucleosis. So that is all about the pathogenesis of Epstein-Barr virus. Then let us move forward. So the same thing. Whatever I said in the pathogenesis, the same thing there in the visual representation here. So the virus will enter through the mouth, and it will replicate in the oropharynx. It will cause a destruction to the nearby epithelial cells. From epithelial cells, it will migrate to the nearby lymph nodes. Meanwhile, it will infect the B cells, causing B cell carcinoma, and it will also lysis the B cells, and it will once again enter into the secondary viremia. After secondary viremia, it will cause a B cell lymphoma, infectious mononucleosis due to T cells will get activated by the Epstein-Barr virus, which is causing infectious mononucleosis. Parallelly, it will also cause nasopharyngeal carcinoma in the nasopharynx of the mouth. So this is the overall pathogenesis of the Epstein-Barr virus infection. Okay. So coming to the lab diagnosis of Epstein-Barr virus. In the lab diagnosis, we have similar parameters like we can take a swab from the nasopharyngeal swab, or blood smear can be taken. In the blood smear, you can able to see mononucleocytes. So you can see the white blood cells with mononucleus with a vacuolation in the center of the cells. And also, if we have a very specific serological test to detect this infectious mononucleosis, or to detect this Epstein-Barr virus. Since this virus attacking the B cells, those B cells will produce abnormally high levels of IgM antibodies, and these IgM antibodies detected serologically by a test called Paul-Bunel test. So with the help of this Paul-Bunel test, we can able to detect the Epstein-Barr virus. So Paul-Bunel test is a Epstein-Barr virus specific serological test we have to detect the Epstein-Barr virus. So during infectious mononucleosis, heterophile antibodies appear in the serum of the patient. These are IgM antibodies elicited by, or produced by the Epstein-Barr virus infection. These antibodies appear in 85 to 90% of the patient's serum during the acute phase of infection. Their titer decreases rapidly within 4th week of the viral infection. So within 3 months, we can able to detect these viral antibodies. IgM antibodies can be detected only within 3 months after post-infection, right? These antibodies can be detected by these antibodies have the tendency to agglutinate the sheep red blood cells. So what we will do, first we will take the serum of the patient and we will heat inactivate the serum at 56 degrees centigrade for half an hour. Since my marker is in white, you're unable to see the cursor. Let me keep it. So first we need to do, what is the procedure of Paul Banal test? So the procedure is, we need to take the serum of the patient, then we need to inactivate the serum by heating the serum at 56 degrees centigrade for half an hour. After half an hour, we need to dilute this serum sample with 1% of sheep erythrocyte suspension. Okay, so these tubes are incubated at 37 at room temperature for 4 hours. After 4 hours, we should examine for agglutination. A titer above 100 agglutination indicates positive for infectious mononucleosis. So this infectious mononucleosis can be detected by a specific serological test called Paul Banal test, where we will heat inactivate the patient serum and we will subject it to the sheep red blood cells. Upon detection of the agglutination of sheep red blood cells of the titer above 100 indicates positive for possible infectious mononucleosis condition in the patient. So this is the specific test for detection of Epstein-Barr virus in the patient serum, which is a serological test to detect the Epstein-Barr virus infection. So this is called the Paul Banal test. Okay, so this Paul Banal test depends upon the principle of agglutinating the sheep red blood cells. When we subject the sheep red blood cells to the serum of the patient, right? So this is called the Paul Banal test. So that's it, students. That is how we will detect this particular virus. There is no prophylaxis to the herpes viruses. There is no treatment for Epstein-Barr virus, but there is some antiviral drugs are available for few herpes viruses, but not to the Epstein-Barr virus. So yeah, so this is all about Epstein-Barr virus. A quick revision of Epstein-Barr virus, then we can proceed for the next virus. So a quick revision of today's class. So as we discussed, we are discussing about herpes viruses. In the coming to the classification of herpes viruses, we have 3 families in the herpes subfamilies in the herpes family. They are alpha viruses, beta viruses, and gamma viruses. Alpha viruses include herpes simplex 1, herpes simplex 2, and Epstein-Barr virus. Herpes simplex 1 and 2 will cause latent infections, whereas Epstein-Barr virus will cause the Burkitt's lymphoma, nasopharyngeal carcinoma, and the infectious mononucleosis, which is also called as kissing syndrome. That is seen in Epstein-Barr virus. Then in the beta viruses, we have cytomegalovirus and varicella. In the gamma, we have varicella zoster. So in the next lecture, I will discuss about beta virus, which is cytomegalovirus, and varicella zoster will be discussed in the upcoming days. Meanwhile, so today we are discussing about the Epstein-Barr virus. So Epstein-Barr virus morphology is similar to the herpes virus, which is size is 100 to 200 nanometer, shape is irregular, symmetry is icosahedral with 162 capsomes, genome is double-stranded DNA, envelope present, special structures such as tegment membrane is present to the herpes family viruses. Then Epstein-Barr virus will cause Burkitt's lymphoma, nasopharyngeal carcinoma, and the infectious mononucleosis condition. So this is Burkitt's lymphoma, this is nasopharyngeal carcinoma, and this is infectious mononucleosis. In case of infectious mononucleosis, we can able to detect exudates in the tonsils. If you see the tonsils of this patient, there we can see pus exudates within the mouth. So presence of this particular pus exudates indicates the sign for the infectious mononucleosis disease in the infected patient. Then we discussed about the pathogenesis of this particular Epstein-Barr virus infection. This Epstein-Barr virus will replicate first in the mouth, then it will replicate in the epithelial cells of the nasopharyngeal region. Then it will go to the B cells with the help of a receptor called CD21. Then it will cause B cell carcinoma. Then it will cause Burkitt's lymphoma. Then it will spread through the lymph nodes. Meanwhile, parallelly, it will attack the T lymphocytes, causing infectious mononucleosis. Then it will also cause nasopharyngeal carcinoma in the mouth. So this is all about the pathogenesis of this particular Epstein-Barr virus. Then we discussed about the lab diagnosis. In the lab diagnosis, we can do white blood cell count. Then also we can do a serological test called Paul Banal test. In the Paul Banel test, we will take the patient serum and we will heat inactivate it at 156 degrees centigrade for half an hour. Then we will subject sheep red blood cells to this serum at dilutions. So agglutination to the titer above 100 indicates positive for the positive for this particular infectious mononucleosis condition, which is disease caused by the Epstein-Barr virus. So this particular test is called as Paul Banel test. So this is all about Epstein-Barr virus. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. If not, I can proceed for the next virus. Shall I proceed? Any doubts in Epstein-Barr virus, students?
No, sir.
Okay. Since we already finished this class, I was a little bit quick. Okay. So don't feel like I was too fast. Anyway, we are together for a long time, so you know what I will do, how I will teach. I mean, let me share the second PowerPoint. I mean the next virus. Evening you have QCM 3. Okay, so the students that I mentioned in the group, they need to attend the meeting, okay, at 6 o'clock. So 6 o'clock you need to attend the MS team meeting only for 5 minutes. It won't be not more than 5 minutes, just a 5-minute talk regarding, you know, right, QCM. Okay. Okay, coming to the next virus, next herpes virus in the unit 5, which is cytomegalovirus. So in the unit 5 we have DNA viruses. As I said, we have smallpox and herpes viruses. As you know, the classification of herpes viruses, in the classification we have alpha viruses, beta viruses and gamma viruses. Alpha viruses we already discussed, which is herpes simplex virus and the Epstein-Barr virus. So we finished herpes simplex viruses and Epstein-Barr virus. Then the next virus today we are discussing is cytomegalovirus. So what is cytomegalovirus? What is the clinical symptoms and what is the mode of pathogenesis and transmission? We will see in this lecture. So coming to the cytomegalovirus, introduction to cytomegalovirus. See, keep in mind, students, I want to ask a question. What are teratogens? Can anyone tell what are teratogens?
In rabies,
In rabies.
agent which cause fetal abnormality.
Very good. The agents that will cause fetal abnormalities are called as teratogens. That means the woman that was infected by this virus, she will be perfectly fine. There won't be any problem in the woman. But the fetus will get damaged by these viruses. These viruses can able to bypass the placenta and it will cause the developmental abnormalities to the developing baby in the uterus or in the abdomen of the woman. So that will, the agents that will cause fetal abnormalities, growth abnormalities, those agents are called as teratogens. And in teratogens we have biological teratogens. Most of the biological teratogens are herpes viruses actually. So our cytomegalovirus is also a teratogenic virus. That means it will cause developmental abnormalities to the fetus that is growing inside the uterus. So cytomegalovirus will cause problems to the uterus, to the fetus. So this virus usually it will shed in the urine, saliva, semen and cervical secretions including tear and breast milk. So even the males won't get affected or the women won't get affected even though they have the virus infection in them. But it will cause genetically abnormal babies. So congenital error babies will get born. So the babies are the primary target. It will do. Okay. So the cytomegalovirus target location is our neural cells, actually our brain. So it will stay in our brain and we will be permanently latent infection through until our death. The virus will present in our body, but we won't get any signs and symptoms. But when we are going for any sexual intercourse, at that time the virus will transmit through either through semen or through vaginal secretions. The baby will get affected by the viral infection, which is cytomegalovirus. So this disease is very rare, but infection will cause infection with the virus is extremely common. So cytomegalovirus disease is very rare. Usually we won't see this disease, but The infection is very common. Infection means everyone will get exposed to cytomegalovirus now and then. So yes, so our cytomegalovirus belongs to the beta family of the herpes viridae family. So beta genus to the herpes viridae family. Then coming to the morphology of cytomegalovirus, the same thing such as herpes virus, which is size is 100 to 200 nanometers, shape is irregular, symmetry icosahedral with 162 capsomes, genome is double-stranded DNA, envelope present, special proteins present. So special proteins such as the tegment membrane is present on the lower, on the below surface, the second membrane of this particular virus, which is tegment membrane. Then coming to the pathogenesis of cytomegalovirus, usually this virus will transmit through droplets. So the person that has infected by cytomegalovirus, this virus will transmit through the droplets such as tears and saliva. Then it will enter into the body and it will replicate. Primary replication will occur. Then it will gain entry to the lymph nodes and it will replicate in the lymph nodes and it will cause primary viremia. That means the virus will enter into the blood. Then if it is a woman, if this virus infected if this virus infected a woman, means upon primary infection, this virus will start through the blood. This virus will start migrating towards the fetus. Upon primary infection in the woman, this virus will bypass to the placenta and it will affect the fetus, causing prenatal or premature baby's formation. It will cause damage to the developing baby and that will cause mentally retarded babies, still babies, blindness in the babies, premature babies, and congenitally disordered babies will be formed due to this cytomegalovirus infection. Okay, and also in the patients we can see hepatosplenomegaly, that means inflammation of liver and spleen, and we can see jaundice, thrombocytopenia, which is decreased platelet cell count. Thrombocytopenic purpura means due to decreased platelet count, the blood will coagulate within the blood vessels, causing purpura. It is a condition of multiple blood clottings within the blood. And the important thing that we need to see in cytomegalovirus infection is it will specifically target the neural cells of the baby. So the baby's nervous system will get highly affected, resulting in formation of microcephalus with chorioretinitis. That means the babies that are infected by cytomegalovirus will have short head. They will have a very small head with small brain. Actually, they are mentally retarded. And this virus will start secreting in the urine and saliva of the baby. So usually this virus is an asymptomatic at birth. We don't know that the baby was infected by this virus. It is an asymptomatic in the baby, but it will cause the cytomegalic inclusions in the cytomegalic inclusions. That means it will cause damage to the brain cells of the baby. Okay, so postnatal, this infection can occur in two types. One is when the postnatal and prenatal. Prenatal means when the woman, during the pregnant woman itself, vertical transmission. So vertical transmission through mother to child, and postnatal infection means after baby burning through some outside contact. When someone has a cytomegalovirus infection, through the droplets the baby get infected. So that is called a postnatal infection. So postnatal infection can also be seen. It is acquired by sexual intercourse, which is a sexually transmitted disease, through sexual intercourse, blood transfusion, or by organ transplantation. The cytomegalovirus will transmit through the person to person. So the clinical disease in adults resembles infectious mononucleosis. So usually we will see like the patient got affected by Epstein-Barr virus infection. So in case of adults, we will see infectious mononucleosis like signs and symptoms. Sometimes it will also cause hepatitis or pneumonitis. Hepatitis means inflammation of the liver and the lung. So this virus will cause a disseminated infection in immunocompromised patients. Disseminated infection means this virus will start disseminating. That means spreading in the all organs of the body, causing multi-organ failure. So this is common. Multi-organ failure can be seen commonly among immunocompromised people, such as the patients which are infected by HIV infection. Among those, disseminated infection can also be seen by cytomegalovirus. Okay. So that's it, students. So that is the primary infection, secondary infection. So let us see once again here. So yeah, this is a baby which was infected by herpes simplex, herpes cytomegalovirus. So the complete name should be written like this, HCMV, because herpes virus, herpes cytomegalovirus. So the virus will enter through the lungs, it will go through the oropharynx, that it will recruit the white blood cells, causing through the white blood cells it will start disseminating into the organs of the body. So it will start causing central foci, liver, spleen will get affected, then secondary viremia. After secondary viremia, the virus will start replicating in the salivary gland, mammary glands, and kidneys, and the virus will start discharging in the community through the saliva, mammary glands, and kidneys, right? So this is the oral pathogenesis of cytomegalovirus. So this is a baby which was infected by the cytomegalovirus infection. So this is a cytomegalovirus infected baby. Usually these babies won't survive not more than 6 months to 2 years. Within 2 years they will die, because this virus will start replicating in the brain of these babies, resulting in mental disorders. So mentally retarded babies, usually they don't know what they are doing. So they will get mentally retarded infection within the brain, and obviously they will die due to cessation of the functions of certain important centers within the brain, such as the respiratory center, your thirst center. So there are few nucleuses that will control the overall body things, right? So they will get affected by the virus, and the baby will die within 2 years. So this is the fatal consequences of the cytomegalovirus infection. Usually the primary candidates that will be susceptible to the virus is the babies actually. So babies will get affected by the cytomegalovirus infection, and they will die very early at young age. Coming to the lab diagnosis of cytomegalovirus. So the specimens of choice are urine, saliva, breast milk, semen, cervical secretions, and blood leukocytes are the specimens that we can collect to detect the cytomegalovirus. So the specimens include urine, saliva, breast milk, semen, cervical secretions, and blood leukocytes. If you start studying virology and microbiology, it is always better to do all these tests after having marriage, because we don't know from where we will acquire all these infections. So before having children, it is wise to do all these screening tests of both the couple, both male and female. So by that we can able to prevent the possible future encounter any problems. So at least you should do these things, okay? So we know all these consequences. So there is no wrong on pre-diagnosing ourselves with these infectious agents. Who knows, right? So it is not a bad thing. You can happily do these tests, preliminary screening, after you are getting married. Okay, so yeah, these are the specimens of choice: urine, saliva, breast milk, cervical secretions, blood leukocytes, and semen are the specimens of choice. Then demonstrates the cytomegalic cells. As I said, these cells, when we observe the blood smear of these patients who are infected by the cytomegalovirus, we can able to see these owl eyes. They're looking like the eyes of owl. So these owl-eyed inclusion bodies can be seen inside the cells of the patient that are infected by cytomegalovirus. So this is a characteristic feature. Presence of this owl-eyed inclusion bodies indicates the patient has a cytomegalovirus infection. Okay, so this virus is usually isolated from human fibroblasts, and this virus will replicate very slowly. Therefore cytopathic effects can be seen as a refractile cytoplasmic granules after 2 to 3 weeks. So these inclusion bodies can only appear after 2 to 3 weeks, where we can see owl-eyed inclusion bodies can be seen inside the cell of the patient that was infected by cytomegalovirus infection. So, and also this virus can be detected by immunofluorescence tests or immunoperoxidase techniques, which is your ELISA techniques, or by using monoclonal antibodies, we can able to detect the cytomegalovirus in the patient. Coming to the inclusion bodies. In case of cytomegalovirus, we will detect intranuclear inclusion bodies, particularly Cowdery type B basophilic intranuclear inclusion bodies can be seen in the cytomegalovirus infection. So in case of cytomegalovirus infection, we will see Cowdery type B basophilic intranuclear inclusion bodies can be detected in the cytomegalovirus infection, right? So Yeah, Cowdery type B intranuclear inclusion bodies can be seen in the cytomegalovirus infection. That's it. Then antigen detections, we can detect antigens by using some antibodies, or we can go for direct detection of virus by PCR. Even we have serological test where we can detect cytomegalovirus specific IgM antibodies can be detected by ELISA technique. And there is a treatment available for cytomegalovirus infected child. So the treatment is, in severe cytomegalovirus infection, ganciclovir is the drug of choice for treating the patient who has this cytomegalovirus infection. So ganciclovir is a drug that can be used to treat cytomegalovirus infection, right? Coming to the prophylaxis, immunoprophylaxis of cytomegalovirus infection. So prophylaxis is indicated only in high-risk cases such as organ transplantation, premature infects, or immunodeficient persons. So screening of blood and organs administration of simple serotherapy. There is a serotherapy available. So the patient that is already have infection with the cytomegalovirus, that serum can be taken and that serum can be given as an alternative, which is a passive immunization can be given, which is serotherapy given, right? That is the only available prophylaxis we have, but there is no vaccine for herpes viruses. So this is all about cytomegalovirus. A quick revision. Cytomegalovirus it is a teratogenic virus. That means it will infect, it will cause genetic abnormalities in the developing baby through the mother that was infected. Then it will cause conditions like hepatosplenomegaly, jaundice, thrombocytic purpura, microcephaly, carotinitis will be caused by this virus. Even this virus also cause infectious in case of adults, this virus will show infectious mononucleosis like condition hepatitis and pneumocystis can be seen in case of adults, and this virus will shed through urine and saliva. So if you see the pathogenesis of this virus will enter through droplets. It will migrate to the nearby lymph nodes and it will cause primary viremia. Then primary viremia, if it is a pregnant, the virus will go to the fetus and it will cause a premature defects in the fetus, right? So this is the pathogenesis of cytomegalovirus. Coming to the lab diagnosis, specimens of choice for detection of cytomegalovirus are urine, saliva, breast milk, semen, cervical secretions, and blood leukocytes. Detection of cytomegalic cells. So owl eyes cells can be detected in the patients that are infected by cytomegalovirus infection. So isolation of virus. This virus can be isolated. That means cultivate. This virus can be cultivated in human fibroblast cell cultures, and the growth of the replication of this virus is very slow. So the inclusion bodies can only appear after 2 to 3 weeks after infection, right? So the inclusion bodies are cytomegalovirus inclusion bodies are Cowdery type B basophilic intranuclear inclusion bodies can be detected in the cytomegalovirus infection. Then the other test that we can do, Bobby, the other test that we can do are antigen detection tests by using monoclonal antibodies, polymerase chain reaction to detect the viral antigen, serological test, which is cytomegalovirus specific IgM antibodies can be detected in the serum by ELISA technique, or right. So these are the detection of cytomegalovirus in the patient blood sample. Coming to the treatment of cytomegalovirus, the drug of choice for treating the cytomegalovirus is ganciclovir. Ganciclovir is the drug of choice for treating the patients with the cytomegalovirus infection. My goodness. నేను క్లాస్లో ఉన్నారా క్లాస్లో క్లాస్లో ఉన్నారా రే ఆడచ్చు. Okay, prophylaxis. Coming to the prophylaxis, in case of severe infection, we can go for serotherapy. So this is all about cytomegalovirus. If you have any doubts, you can ask me, or shall I proceed for the next virus students? Shall I proceed to the varicella zoster?
Sir, not today, sir.
Okay, so these two viruses are enough for today. Today we discussed about Epstein-Barr virus and cytomegalovirus. So Epstein-Barr virus will cause sorry. So Epstein-Barr virus will cause these three conditions. What are those? Nasopharyngeal carcinoma, Burkitt's lymphoma, and infectious mononucleosis, which is kissing syndrome, can be seen in Epstein-Barr virus, whereas this cytomegalovirus is a teratogenic virus that will infect the developing baby and it will cause abnormality. The abnormal baby will be born by cytomegalovirus. So the inclusion bodies in case of cytomegalovirus is Cowdery type B basophilic intranuclear inclusion bodies. Then we can able to detect this cytomegalic cell, which is ovoid cells can be seen in the blood smear of the patient. And yeah, that's it. That is all about the cytomegalovirus. Then in the next class, we can discuss about varicella zoster. So varicella and zoster are two different diseases that are caused by the same virus. Okay, so varicella will occur at younger age, and the same virus will reactivate when the person become old age. I hope you know you will say, right, Mata disease, as our Navneet said. So Mata disease will get when you are a children, you will get one Mata disease, and when you become elder, when you become after 60 to 70 years, at that time also you will get another Mata disease, right? The pox infection. So that older age Mata disease is the same virus that was infected during the person is younger. So the same virus will reactivate in the late age after 60 years. That condition is called zoster, whereas younger age infection is called varicella. People used to think that varicella and zoster are two different viral infections, but today we came to know that it is the varicella, the reactivated varicella is the zoster. So that is why after coming to know the fact that varicella and zoster are same viruses, we include both as a single name, which is varicella zoster. So varicella is a pox infection, pox-like things we can see, and zoster is a shingles. Shingles is in case of adults. So that we will discuss in the next lecture. Today I won't discuss anything regarding varicella zoster. So thank you very much, students, for your patience and your cooperation. Can I end this class? If you have any doubts, you can ask me.
Okay, sir.
Okay, let me download the attendance. So thank you very much, students.
Sir, use the boiled water.
Use the boiled water
Don't
for
use
what?
cold water. Sir, you are coughing, sir.
Sure, Asim. Thank you. Since I'm in home. Okay. Okay, see you. Your class ended. Thank you.